So we like to provide the very best. Our fire department under Chief Pierce is just excellent. The people who he's selected to be his upper management are great. But the thing is, the people who really do the work are the people at the bottom of the fire department, the lower end firefighters, and I shouldn't even say lower end, our firefighters, because there's nothing lower end about them. These guys are well trained. We've increased our police and fire training. We have a number of people that believe it's our duty, including me, myself on the board, to provide the best possible care. Now, I mean, Frank Pierce is the man in the center over there. Please wave. We have Assistant Chief Josh Foshi. We have Deputy Fire Marshal and Emergency Management Coordinator Brian Werner. We have Training Coordinator Haddle. And we have Captain Christina Simon, who's the EMS Coordinator. I just had a conversation with the union representative about her duties, and he was telling me she's the one who looks for constant improvement. She's seeking out better ways of treatment for the people who the fire department comes into contact with when they call for medical services. And it's good because it makes our people really sharp. And now we have, because we're well known for doing a lot of things and becoming a very professional fire department, we have a lot of people standing in line now to become a member of our fire department. We only want the very best. Now, today we're talking about acute ischemic stroke, and we have Dr. Reyes, who's head of the neurovascular intervention at McLaren Macomb, and we have another doctor who works with him as a partner, Dr. Anil Maju, also of the same internal vascular medicine. Dr. Reyes?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind introduction, and it's a beautiful day today, so it's better? Okay. Remind me, please. I'm not used to public speaking with a mic. We do a lot of our work under X-rays, and everybody's quiet. So I'm a neurologist by background, trained down in Detroit Medical Center. Did a lot of work in vascular neurology or strokes, and did neurocritical care, meaning patients with ICU and bad stroke. I took care of them, and now I do what's called interventional, which is a new field which we go through the groin with a catheter and wire like a hard docs, but we go to the brain. More neat if you ask me, but that's my personal opinion. So we've been at this since 2010, and I've been with McLaren since 2015. So I go to McLaren Flint and McLaren Macomb, or Mount Clemens General for some of you guys who know. So thanks for the opportunity, and I agree with the councilman. Great EMS services, guys. I've been going around talking to them. These guys are spot on. You're lucky to have them, okay? So it's meant to be very interactive. I don't have a lot of slides. I got already some questions already, but keep them coming when I'm done, okay? So for Star Wars fan, right? May the Force be with you. So May is Stroke Awareness Month. That's why we're doing this. So just a quick reminder, I always start my talks with this slide. It's very important to keep those in mind. Stroke is the 5th leading cause of death in this country. And it's very prevalent and scary enough that every 4 minutes, unfortunately, somebody dies of strokes in this country. And it breaks all of our hearts. We do everything we can to reduce these numbers, but it's a really huge number. And to make it even worse, every 40 seconds, somebody gets a stroke. And a lot we could do to prevent them. 80% of them could be prevented. And that goes into a lot of lifestyle activities, food, choices we make on every day, and things of that nature, okay? And to put it a little bit into perspective, in Michigan, we're a little bit lucky, okay? We are middle around the country in terms of mortality or death, meaning if you get a stroke in Michigan, you're in the middle of risks. If you went down south, your risks go up. So we make some good choices, okay? But we still need to do a little bit more than that. More activity, more healthier food, weight control, blood pressure control, things of that nature. And we can talk a little bit more details if you guys have any specific questions about that. And numbers-wise, we lost in 2016 5,000 people from stroke in this state, which is close enough to accidents. Years and years ago, we were number 6. We improved So hopefully we can continue to improve as the time goes by. And I like to highlight something also cost-wise. It costs this country around $56 billion a year for stroke care. That includes costs around programs, medications, recovery, disability, all these kind of things. It's very, very expensive. All right, and that's, as the population ages, and that's what we're looking like we're gonna be, these costs are only gonna continue to increase. But now we have a lot of options that we didn't have years ago. So when me and Dr. Majou were training, we had what's called a clot-busting medication, or something called TPA, and now at McLaren we use TNK, which is a cousin, which is a little bit better, but we didn't have much else. But now we have this interventional things, right? We go through your groin or through your arm, catheter wire, we go all the way to the brain, and we yank that clot out, we get it out. And we're successful pretty good. We're almost 90% of the times able to pull it out. And that gives patients the best chance of improvement. And that's something all of you need to be aware of if your loved one or family member gets it and they have that occlusion or blockage, all right? Think about it. It can be a life changer, okay? And there are, oops, this is too sensitive. So there are 3 types of strokes, okay? The first one, which is the most common, is called ischemic stroke, which means a blocked artery. That's almost 90% of all strokes. And you block blood flow to the brain, cells die, and that's how stroke evolves and gets worse. The second one, which is called an intracranial hemorrhage or intracerebral hemorrhage, which is a blocked artery. It's a busted pipe, burst pipe, and that blood gets all the brain and causes damage. And then the least common, which is called a subarachnoid hemorrhage, is an aneurysm that bleeds and you get blood around that brain, which is around 5%. So majority of people, unfortunately, get what's called an ischemic stroke or a blocked artery. But we use that term to describe 3 kind of different diseases, if you will, okay? And as I'm talking, there's a lot of what's called modifiable risk factors, or risk factors that we can control that keeps these guys not as busy, which I'm sure they don't want to be as busy with these calls. But one of them is obesity or weight. So the more weight you gain, obviously your blood pressure goes up, your heart has a hard time keeping up, your diabetes risk goes up, your cholesterol goes up, and that feeds into other risk factors. Sleep apnea, for example. Unfortunately, smoking is a strong risk factor. Obviously, any kind of use of illegal drugs is at risk. And any heart disease increases the risk of stroke. But out of all those, the most important is blood pressure. For most people, we say blood pressure needs to be under 140/90. So for people with high blood pressure, it's always good to measure blood pressure once a day. Make sure your numbers look good. Almost by each 10 points increase in blood pressure, there's almost a 2-fold increase in risk of stroke. So if you are to spend your money on one thing, I'll tell you your blood pressure. Okay, but don't, obviously you're not gonna forget other stuff. Activity is very important, and that all falls under what's called a modifiable risk factor, or things you could do to reduce that risk of stroke. Take your medicine if you got AFib, for example. Take your aspirin on time, all right? Now, there are other things that we can't modify, unfortunately, like age, the fact that you had stroke before, if you got family history of stroke, or tendency to form clots. These are things you can't control, and that's called non-modifiable risk factors. So we don't spend a lot of time talking about them because, it is what it is. But there's a lot you could do to reduce that risk of another stroke, okay? And for some of these identifications for you guys and your family, and we've gone to schools actually as young kids, and we've taught them this. Sometimes that's the only person at home. So the mnemonic is called Be Fast, right? So what does Be Fast mean? B stands for balance or sudden loss of balance. A stroke usually is a sudden, meaning acute, meaning you're sitting there and it happens right out the gate, right? It doesn't get worse on you. It happens like this. So when you suddenly lose your balance, when you lose vision in one eye, okay, you can't see, it's dark. When you, F stands for face, your face is kind of like twisted or flat. You can't move it. A stands for arms. One of the arms is weak. You can't move it, right? S stands for speech. You got this slurred speech, or you can't talk. You can't understand. And T is for terrible headache, a really bad headache. Like we talked about, usually it's a bleeding stroke. right? And then the most important thing you can do or your family can do, once you recognize this, you call that 911. These guys know what to do. They'll get you to us as soon as they can, as safe as possible, and helps us do our job and give you a best chance of recovery from a stroke. All right, so think about this, be fast. But make sure you call 911, please. Do not drive in. All right, our system is designed in a way that works best with these guys. When you come in, you're gonna go through other layers that might take some time to recognize your stroke. But when you come with them, they do the legwork for us, they save us time, and time is everything for treatment of stroke. The faster you go, the better things are for you at the end of the day. Okay? And one thing I find lacking a lot is not knowing your resources, right? You wouldn't go and shop or eat without pulling up a Yelp or putting up some consumer's review, right? So you gotta know your resources. So there's certification levels for stroke centers, okay? And there's multiple certifying bodies. One of the most common is what's called a Joint Commission. So the Joint Commission has what's almost 4 layers, if you will, of stroke certification. And the higher the layer, the better or the more available resources, the more available services, the less chances you're going to be transferred somewhere else. So the basic one is called stroke-ready hospitals. So my advice to you is you can look up through the Joint Commission website or the American Heart Association website, or you can Google it. See the hospitals around you, see what their certification is. Stroke-ready means they give you some clot-busting medication, but they will transfer you somewhere else. Basic stuff, sometimes Access hospitals, all they have, right? Resources, cost a lot of resources to maintain certification. Second one is called primary stroke centers. Those give you the clot-busting medication, keep you in, but they cannot deal with your bleeds. They cannot deal with you if you have a blocked artery, which you need our procedures. They will send you somewhere else. All right. The third layer, what's called thrombectomy capable, meaning they can do these procedures we're doing, but they cannot handle bleeding and significant complications. Okay. And the highest level, which means you will get any care you need, regardless if it's a bleed, it's a stroke, a blocked artery, is it a swelling, doesn't matter what it is, which is called a comprehensive stroke center, or for short CSC. That's kind of your level 1 traumas, all right, if you know, or you get a STEMI, you're gonna need that artery open. That's what the level is, and that's the highest level. And McLaren-Macomb is the only one in the county that is a comprehensive stroke center certified. So keep that in mind where you're gonna go. The higher the level, the better chances you get in getting better, because you're not gonna get transferred, everything's time dependent. So whatever you are in the county, just look up your levels, and always good to have a plan in case. God forbid, we don't want anybody to have a stroke. Believe it, but it's good to know your resources, okay? So we are at McLaren-Macomb, the only one in the state, in the county that does these kind of procedures, and they are certified for it, okay? And this is a video of what me, Dr. Maju, and Dr. Naravetla do. So, this is kind of like a blocked artery, and we get what's called a stent retriever. We go in. Things are a lot smaller in this video, guys. It's just, this is magged up way too much. I wish it was that big. So you pull out that clot and into your catheter, and you clear up that blood vessel. And that restores blood flow and gives that patient best chances of surviving such a bad stroke. We used to dread those, me and Dr. Maju, because we knew we didn't have a lot of options years and years ago. But now, with this procedure, around 70% of patients can do pretty well, depending on certain criteria. On average, 1 out of 3 patients or 1 out of 4 patients we treat do very well once we do these procedures. And, oops. So, part of the work that we do, we get a lot of awards. All hospitals get awards, right? So we're lucky enough that McLaren has almost every hospital getting an award, but that's also something you can go on and check for yourself. Check the hospital you like or the hospital that you're closest by, see what awards they have, get a sense of the work that they do, so that when, God forbid, the moment comes in, you're ready to make a choice. okay? And we have this what's called McLaren Stroke Network, which cover almost 18 hospitals all the way up to the Sioux. So we're always on call. We are the ones who get those phone calls for strokes to try to help out folks as much as we can. And I got some pictures for my partners, Dr. Maju and Dr. Narvetla, Dr. Norris, and Julie, our director. And we do a lot of fun things as we can. Pull a lot of clots. With that, I'm going to stop the presentation, and I'll take questions if you guys have any.
I do. What you said, it was wonderful. I just want to make sure that EMS.
So just to, I'm Dr. Maju, by the way, sorry. I'm actually on call, so that's why I keep on walking out of the room and
Flint.
taking phone calls. So that big map he showed, we cover all the northeast of Michigan. So we have a comprehensive stroke center in Flint, and we have one in Macomb as well. So we have to be available. So when they say large vessel occlusion, that video he showed where he removed the clot with the animation, that's what we're talking about. And those are the patients that can most benefit from these therapies. Now, if a patient, when the EMS arrives, is not moving one side of their body, or their eyes are deviated to one side or the other, that can be a sign of a large vessel occlusion, and that's what they're getting trained on. But if, and then those patients may be the best suited to go to a comprehensive stroke center. Whereas a patient where it might just have a little bit of slurring of speech or a little drift, which is still a signs of a stroke, but may not be a large vessel occlusion. And that's where we have partnering with the EMS facilities and educating them on how to identify these type of patients and how to triage better so we can get the best possible outcomes for our community.
Yeah, go ahead.
Healthy eating, organic foods, and lots of healthy green vegetables, and no sugar, no salt. What can I do in addition in my diet myself that would help prevent a stroke?
Great question. I'll start with a caveat. What I start today might change in a few years, like everything in medicine, but there's few good things. You're on the right track, right? You're limiting your carbs, you're limiting your sodium, and the good things these days is what's called a Mediterranean diet. That's kind of got a lot of this good reviews and good results, meaning lots of white meat, right? Less on the red meat side, fish, a lot of decent amount of seafood is good. Chicken, like I said. Using a lot of olive oil, just use that kind of in preparing a lot of stuff, as you cook. Increase your vegetables kind of portion in your food. Avoiding, deep fried stuff, grilling even, these kind of things, all kind of at risk. Now, it's not an absolute, meaning you are not allowed to have anything, but in proportions of what you use, these things seem to help a lot. Fruits during the day in reasonable amount is actually pretty helpful as well. Limiting your alcohol intake. There's some discussions about how much is good and bad, and things keep fluctuating, but maybe a glass of wine, once a day or two is probably okay. We don't know in the future what further results will be. And you kind of get your fiber up and all these kind of things in your portions, right? And you use that information to drive your weight, you drive your level of activities. Smaller portions, multiple times a day seems to help as well. And you tie all of that into your blood pressure, your diabetes control, your cholesterol. Because you take these medications and eventually you'll see weights drop, you'll see use of medication drop, and you'll feel yourself, more energetic.
And no smoking.
And smoking, yeah.
So when you quit smoking, you see the benefit right away, but the maximum benefit is after 15 years of being quit smoking. Smoking, we know now, it wasn't like the way when we were growing up where on commercials or even the doctor would have a cigarette in his hand while interviewing you. If you guys watch the movie Exorcist ever, the doctor comes out of the room with a cigarette in his mouth and talking to the mom. That's not the way the world is now. We all know that there's negative effects of cigarette smoking, and if you haven't quit already, please do so. It causes damages to your blood vessels of your neck. your brain and your heart. And everywhere else in your body can cause cancer. There's many negative effects of cigarette smoking, so I would highly advise you to quit.
I do have some information that so many young people are vaping marijuana. That's gotta be bad. I mean, our generation learned to quit smoking, but these young ones are just like opening up all the time. And that can't be healthy at all for young people.
Yeah, they say the plastic in the vape pens, the fumes from that can cause scarring to the lungs. So there's a lot more new studies that are going on. But unfortunately, that's the state of affairs, especially in Michigan, where it's legalized now, where it's very common. So, you know, you got to be cognizant of that.
If person is having the stroke symptoms, for example, you call 911 right away. Meanwhile, should that person be given the aspirin?
Great question. When I take it, Dr. Mojo, when we take it.
Some of these strokes can be a bleed in the brain. Remember the 13% that Dr. Reyes has shown? So aspirin is a blood thinner. So if you give aspirin to a brain that's bleeding, it's not a good thing. So let the specialists handle that. You know, the EMS crew knows not to give aspirin. We need a CAT scan first to rule out a bleed. So a bleed is a ruptured blood vessel, whereas a ischemic stroke is not enough blood flow to a part of the brain, a blocked blood vessel. You can't tell by the symptoms which one's which. We can only tell with a CAT scan. So we don't want to give an aspirin beforehand because you may be making it worse if you're having a bleed.
So then that feeds into what to do if a patient in your household got a stroke, right? You're absolutely right. The first thing you need to do, make sure that person is safe, right? So are they breathing and something coming from their mouth? Sometimes seizures can be like a stroke presentation, so you make sure they're safe, make sure that somebody is there, check their pulse, make sure things are okay. You call her 911, and then these guys will come in within probably 5 minutes or so from that phone call, be there. And then like Dr. Maju said, we don't know what type of stroke at that point, and that's what we'll figure out later. What's the average for you guys, like from the call to be on scene? 4 to 6 minutes. So these guys will be there quick.
And they're checking your blood sugar too. It could be
Yep.
a low blood sugar
Yep.
if you have diabetes and you're on insulin. A very low blood sugar can give you stroke-like symptoms, and
Good point.
they're all equipped to test that quickly for you.
So, and the other things if there's a list in your mind, you're gonna tell these guys, when was the last time anybody saw that your loved one or family member? All right, that time is important for us to give you clot-busting medication. Dictates a lot of what we do. List of medications that your loved one is on, that also helps us decide these things. And arm that with the knowledge of the hospitals around you, and you can say, I want to go to this facility because of this. Helps these guys make the decision to where to take you to.
We've got so progressive with stroke care that we will actually take you straight to the CAT scan. You will not even get off of our stretcher. We'll take you straight to the CAT scan, put you on the CAT scan table so that your care is way faster than unloading you in the ER, getting checked out, and then getting a CAT scan. So we'll notify the hospital ahead of time that we have somebody with stroke-like symptoms, and they'll clear the table for us.
So one other thing that with bleeding strokes, so comprehensive stroke centers are more equipped and more trained to deal with the bleeding type of strokes as well. So we have special medicines that are reversal antidotes for bleeding stroke. So if any of you are on a medicine called Eliquis or Xarelto, there's a reversal agent that's really expensive that not all hospitals have. McLaren has it. So if you're bleeding from one of those drugs and you're brought to McLaren, when you're in the CAT scan, when we see that result, we can reverse it right away. And within 2 minutes, it's out of your system. Whereas if you go to another health system where they don't have that drug, it's going to be delayed. And you can imagine what the effects of a delayed treatment would be. So that's another benefit that we really didn't cover. All these blood thinners have antidotes, and not all hospitals have all the antidotes to those drugs.
So you had a question.
While we're waiting for EMS, what should we do to help this smoker? Lay him down, or the evidence sit in a chair?
Well, it depends how and where you found them, right? So generally speaking, we don't recommend you moving them around in case there's something else. If they are in a certain position that's kind of really awkward, you can potentially put them in their back. Be careful about their neck if there's signs of fall or traumas. As long as they're safe where you find them and there's nothing dangerous around them, they're not compromising their airway, their breathing, the pulse is okay, you'd call these guys, and these guys will walk you what to do until they get there. And if you guys want to add to it from you, what do you expect them to do as well from your perspective? Any other questions you guys can think about? Go ahead.
How common is it for a narrowing of a vessel to produce stroke-like symptoms? And what would the treatment be then for that?
Great question. So generally,
Could you repeat?
the question is how common a narrowing of a vessel can produce a stroke and what can you do about it? So generally speaking, stenosis or tightness is the term we use. Stenosis of the carotid arteries is a pretty common cause of stroke. And this is why, if you guys notice, you get carotid ultrasounds when you get a little bit into a certain age because they screen for those. So in McLaren, generally speaking, we see around 30% of patients, 35% of patients have some sort of carotid tightness or stenosis as a source of their stroke. Now, countrywide, probably around 25% or so. So it depends which area, and this tightness will kind of change what it is depending on what you eat, what you drink, lifestyle, or these kind of things. So it's pretty common. It's probably the second or third most common cause of stroke that we see. And we usually look at degree of stenosis, tightness, meaning if you're over 70%, okay, we consider that significant enough that requires fixing. And there's two options for fixing them. One is incision in the neck, open up the artery, clean it up. A vascular surgeon does that pretty nicely. And then they patch it up and you're good to go. Or we could go through the arm, through the groin, and we put a stent in, depending on certain criteria. And that stent will open up the vessel, and then you will reduce the risk of recurrent stroke. Now, if you find stenosis or tightness and you don't have a stroke, this is where lifestyle modifications, activities, controlling, a lot of these things will help keep that plaque or tightness at bay and not give you problems, okay? And I want to kind of focus a little bit on that activity part. Would like you guys to kind of be more active. Your family members can be active. All that physical activity at least 2 to 3 times a week, 20 to 30 minutes. We recommend at least 30 minutes of what's called moderate intensity, meaning you're going to get your heart rate a little bit up and do it every other day. That will reduce a lot of risk factors. It'll hit your weight, it'll hit your cholesterol, it'll hit your stroke, all these kind of things. So that's a very good thing to be involved in and do that into your daily routine.
So I just walked into this facility for the first time today. What a wonderful facility.
It's beautiful.
I walked in and I saw exercising first thing in the morning, which I wish I would do. Apparently I'm close to the age to be able to start coming here, which is good. So maybe I'll join you guys. It looks wonderful. This looks like a wonderful facility for you. It looks like that pickleball is really picking up, and I see it like close to home as well. I think these are wonderful activities to stay active multiple times a week. Eat right, like Dr. Reyes is saying. Eat more like he does, less like I do.
I'm trying.
I'm doing okay, but I could do better. We all can, right? So just limit the amount of alcohol. Don't smoke cigarettes. Watch that red meat. Your cholesterols. See your primary care physicians. 80% of these strokes are preventable just by controlling your blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, getting that carotid ultrasound. Make sure you don't have that blockage. Have your heart checked out. Have a stress test done. If you have atrial fibrillation, consider being on an anticoagulant. It was scary before about that Coumadin medicine where you have to check your INRs. There's newer medications out there. There's reversal agents for if you bleed now. Those are drugs that are quite safe and they prevent strokes. If your dentist or doctor asks you to come off your blood thinner for a procedure, make sure your other doctors are aware because That's a very common thing as well. Sometimes you need to get something else fixed, you come off your blood thinner, and then your body throws a clot to your brain and you have a stroke. This is very common. We see that in our practice quite often. So keep in mind that these are risk factors that are preventable.
Years ago, I was given a pocket that affixes to my refrigerator, and you put your list of meds in there, and I'm wondering, are you still giving those out from the fire department?
We actually just created 1,000 of them.
Oh, and it's still there all these years, and when I change a med, I change that list right away.
And we appreciate that.
And it's
when we walk in and
it's
you
the
tell us-
refrigerator you
Yep.
look for, correct?
Yep, and usually patients tell us, I have a file of life, and then we know it's on the refrigerator because it's a magnet. We can run and grab it, and we can look at your list of medications and decide what treatment plan we're gonna make. So that's very important. If you guys wouldn't mind grabbing a file of life for yourselves, your loved ones, we have made 1,000 of them, and we're gonna hand them out and make more if we need to. Thank you. You're welcome.
This is really, truly miraculous work, and I appreciate that you are sharing it with all of us. Is this something that you think down the line is going to be standard procedure whenever someone goes in for a stroke at any facility? Or do you think that it's something that's going to stay specialized to certain facilities?
It's a great question. I think eventually every facility will have it. And this is where it becomes more interesting in a way. Well, who does it better? But that's a different discussion, different day. We think we're the best, but it's biased. But
Well, just a little perspective. So up until 1996, there was no treatment for stroke other than the clot busting medication. That's when that was FDA approved. Then in 2015, these procedures were FDA approved and became standard of care. All right, so it's 2024, so we're only 9 years in. The McLaren Stroke Network has existed since 2015, and we're one of the first fully trained physicians to perform these procedures. In the entire state, there's 4 physicians that are board certified in all 4 qualifications: neurology, stroke, intervention, and neurocritical care. 3 out of the 4 are at McLaren. The 4th one actually has privileges, and he's the one that taught us, actually. But he's available as well. So there's not a lot of people that do this right now. There is a growing number of people who are interested, who want to do it. And I think we're about 10, 15 years before what you're describing is going to happen. I'm sorry, I'm looking at you. So so maybe about 15, 20 years from now, every facility will have it, but at this point in time, there's only certain facilities in the state that actually have these capabilities.
We're grateful that you're in our neighborhood here.
Yeah, it's a very satisfying and very wonderful experience for us too, because we do all of our procedures awake as well. So where we're talking to the patient, we give you medicines to make you comfortable. But when you see a patient come in and they can't move one side of their body, and you remove that clot and they raise their arm, it's just a blessing to be able to be a part of your care. And, you know, it's just a wonderful feeling, and you know, it's something that we really enjoy doing.
I just have the lead.
That you're training the EMS people to look for signs of stroke. How about the people at urgent care? Because sometimes that's the first place people go.
Well, usually they're staffed by RNs and MAs and things like that. So they usually get their own training. There's certain requirements. Most hospitals require every nurse to get training. But it's a good idea. We can figure out those urgent cares. But the good thing is a lot, I would say maybe less than 1% of patients go through an urgent care for stroke waves. And that's why we say call 911, because if you go to an urgent care, there's going to be a delay. So if you suspect a stroke, do not bother going to an urgent care. But, and we'll take it under consideration. We started off with these important guys, and that's where we're, drive it.
Question I have is ER docs. They're not going to be neurologists, they're going to be ER docs. But what do they know about your services, and how can they be trained like that?
So to feed in, the chief was asking me to talk about it a little bit. So there are what's called protocols, okay? So meaning Dr. Maju wrote it, and we've been on it since 2015. So all the ED docs, there's multiple layers of education that goes on. When you're a resident, you rotate with us. We educate you when you're a resident. When you're attending, there's yearly kind of competencies that gets done. So they go over these things. I've educated them about this FAST ED scale, for example, recently. So there's continuous education going on. We have monthly meetings for stroke committees that talks, has an ED representative. So there's multiple layers. So they know what to look for, and they have this kind of algorithm. You have X, Y, and Z, do this. And we have robots around these sites that I showed you guys. Let me pull it up here. So you might wonder, how do we cover all these locations, right? So we get these phone calls, and we use the phone to log into a robot, and we examine patients. So when there's a very low knee-jerk reaction, you suspect a stroke, you call us, we jump in, we look at it because it's all time dependent, and we evaluate, and we make the final decisions about transfer, thrombectomies, blood busting medications, things of that nature. And in fact, we've gotten so good at it that in McLaren, the average door, meaning when you hit my door, you get to blood busting medication if you're eligible in around 23 minutes. And you could imagine how much we have to do it and how much to squeeze in things to get that treatment so quick. And that is only done by that collaboration and just having everybody involved in taking care of it.
In addition to that, at a comprehensive stroke center such as ours, we have advanced practice providers or nurse practitioners 24/7 in our hospital. So when EMS calls ahead and lets us know a stroke is coming, they meet the patient at the door and we'll go to the CAT scan with the patient. And they're on the phone with us because there's only a few of us, right? And we make those decisions together. So that's another reason why a facility that is a comprehensive designation is better, because they have required by the Joint Commission 24/7 boots on ground, or a person in the hospital who's helping the ER physicians make those decisions in a timely fashion.
I just recently retired from work, and one of my jokes at work was, I don't have family contact. I am involved with the singles group at church. A lot of people like their privacy. It's a world of don't get in my business.
That's right.
My family's like that too. So at work I always teased and said, yep, if something happens to me, I know you guys are going to be the first one to find out, because if I don't show up for work, you're going to call. Is there a net? I came into the senior center before I retired, because I was part-time for a bit, and I asked the people that I was at the table with, told them my situation. I said, how do you deal with that? And they said, we're in the same situation. It was just 3 out of 8 people that I asked right the first day, and they said, we don't have anybody either that keeps contact with us. Is there a system in place for people like me? I have a neighbor who doesn't, I don't see all winter long. You know, it's not that personal of a world anymore. If I'm out gardening, how do we deal with that?
Challenging. That's the word I can come up with. But there are a few layers. So, you know, being prepared is always a good thing, right? So there are apps you can have on your phone, for example, that has your medical information. Okay, it allows kind of, not necessarily invasion to your privacy, but in the sense if you can use your phone, these guys can get basic information that helps us make decisions, your medications, your medical history, things like that. So look into it. 2 life alerts, for example, having that kind of thing is probably not a bad idea. You can click it, and these guys will get notified. You know, technology is getting better and better. So, for example, our Apple Watch can detect a fall, so it can make a phone call if needed. I think in the next 5 years, that watch will probably notify us somebody's having a stroke. But those kind of things, you can pair them up with reasonable technology if you're comfortable with, to protect your privacy, is what I can come up with. I don't know if you guys have any other options or ideas about it as well. That's counting.
No, but I feel your concern. You want someone to check on you regularly. So that might be a program that you guys could come up with here. You all can come up with here, maybe some sort of phone tree system or something with people that you trust here that we can check on
This one keeps coming.
by your peers.
I actually was going to ask you guys that. Do people still use Life Alert? Okay, yeah. Because I remember I grew up with those commercials on TV. I've fallen and I can't get up, right? I think that's a wonderful thing, but I think this is not a commercial for Apple. I'm not endorsing them or anything, but Apple has a lot of apps, like you were saying. So if you fall, you can check your heart rate, whether you have atrial fibrillation. I'll let you know. They have this warning says that you can't tell whether you're having a heart attack or not yet, but I'm sure that's coming. And like Dr. Ray is saying, I'm sure they're thinking about stroke as well, as it is so common. Every 40 seconds, someone's having a stroke in our country. Every 4 minutes, someone's dying of a stroke in our country. So that's how common it is.
We're going to take one last question because we only have the room for about 20 minutes.
All right, so can you hear me without the microphone? Yes. All right, perfect. I don't like wandering around with those. As was alluded to, we do have the File of Lives. There's a pile of them over there. We highly encourage everybody to take 1 or 2, give them to your neighbor if they're a shut-in or something. And it does contain all your pertinent medical information, your contacts, as well as your medical insurance. There's a place for that. You can put that in there as well. So please take 1 or 2 of those. Also, you'll see this cute little card in here, and then on the back it has a QR code for your phone, but we have other ways you can access it as well, and it's to a program called Community Connect. What Community Connect allows us to do is you enter any information in there that might be pertinent about your residents. So for example, if you go to the township's website and you click on the fire department, there will be a flyer here that shows you everything that we're looking for, but instead of doing that, we're going to go right to here. We're going to click the link and it's going to come here. You click on the resident side and it's going to pull up this type of information. So within that, you can put, I made a fake account and used it at the fire station, so that way I had information to give to you. So you can put in your name and things like that, anybody else that lives in the house with you. You can put in your contacts, so your kids, your neighbor, whomever you'd like us to be able to call in case of an emergency. Any functional needs that you might have, perhaps you're on oxygen, or perhaps you're hard of hearing, or perhaps you're bedbound. You can put that information in there. You can put in your dog, if you have dogs and cats. I thought I had a picture in there. Yeah, I thought, oh, I did do it. There we go.
But in the case of a fire, that might be useful.
So there's little Lucy. She visited the fire station one day. You can also put in access to where your utility shutoffs are, so where your gas meter is, electrical meter, things like that. This is important to us in case of a fire.
More importantly, if you have a code to your house that we need to use to get in, you can put it in. Okay?
So if you have a door, a lock box on your door, so if you live alone, we highly recommend getting a lock box for your front door, so that way we can enter in the code that you provide, and we don't have to break your door to come in and get you if you just simply fallen and couldn't get up, as we've alluded to. So this is what it looks like when we see it. Only our people can see it. It's bank encrypted, or it's the same encryption that the banks use. Only our people can see it. So,
Fire department.
yep, only the fire department can see this. So,
You get one of those lock boxes.
you can get the lock boxes at any of the hardware stores. Any of the hardware stores, Ace, Home Depot, Lowe's. Yeah, just like the realtors use if you've bought a house in the last while. So in here, this is what we see when it pulls up. We can see that you have. Do we have smoke detector or elevators, sprinkler system? Do we have a dog? Who are we looking for? Things like that. So we only see the information that you provide to us. And again, it's only us that can see that information in the fire department when we go on that call. All right, we highly recommend that everybody does this. Additionally, there's a spot here for a smoke alarm request. So if you have older smoke detectors, the state of Michigan has a program called My Prevention, and they get like $1 million a year, and they buy smoke detectors with it. And we participate in that program. If you go in here and fill out a request, we'll come out and change out your smoke detectors for you. And they put in a 10-year sealed lithium battery, so you don't have to change them every time the clock's changed. They're good for 10 years. Caveat to it, they are just battery operated. They don't have the wires like you might have now, so they don't necessarily talk to each other. We'll also install at least one carbon monoxide detector in your house for you. But again, the way you sign up is through the Community Connect. If you're not a web person, call the fire station, and one of the administrative assistants will create a fake account for you, and we can track the smoke alarms that way. All right, but again, we highly encourage everybody to do this. It's just more of your information to us in case you aren't able to speak to us and you didn't fill out the file of life. There's just more ways for us to help you in case of an emergency. Yes, ma'am.
I somehow lost track or didn't hear you about how do I get this community connect?
Sure. If you go, either you can scan in the file of life. We gave a little card in the back of it, and there's a QR code. Or you can go to the township's, sorry about that. Or you can go to the township's website, click on the fire department, and then you can click on the link here and it'll take you to that page.
There's a direct link on the card as well.
Oh, is there a direct website right on the card as well? I can't read it, Chelsea. They're not going to be. Holy cow. Yeah, it is right on the back of the card as well. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Not that I'm aware of. We're the only ones in Macomb County currently with this platform for Community Connect. I'm not sure what other departments are using as far as public outreach. Yes, sir.
So my smoke detector is more than 10 years old, I should probably replace it.
Yes, every smoke detector that's older than 10 years old needs to go. Yes. And carbon monoxide detectors as well, especially carbon monoxide detectors, because then they start beeping and you call us and we come out and just tell you that it's old and go get another one. Yes, ma'am.
Regarding smoke and carbon monoxide, how far, I had mine on the ceiling and my furnace was just condemned because of carbon monoxide leaks. Never detected it.
Might be time for a new one then.
They're pretty new.
Interesting.
The fellow said, research said should be more higher than your eye level because carbon monoxide is lighter or heavier than oxygen. Is that true?
Generally, you'll see a lot of folks will buy the ones that plug right into the wall at the lower levels. So we do recommend that those are about 3 feet from the ceiling. Eye level is usually unesthetically pleasing, and people don't like to do that. So 3 feet from the ceiling is optimal. But as long as you have one in the house somewhere, so your furnace might have been emitting carbon monoxide, but it wasn't at a level dangerous enough to tell that detector, because there's carbon monoxide just in the air, right? So just because it didn't go off doesn't mean it wasn't working. It just might mean that the level wasn't quite high enough to trigger it. Any other questions for me about? Yes, ma'am.
Is that for anybody that lives in the township, regardless of age?
Yes, ma'am. Community Connect. Correct. Everybody that lives in the township has access to it. Yeah. Let your kids know. Let your grandkids know.
It's really nice for, some of us might have someone that's disabled in the house and they're in this bedroom, letting us know that. I mean, time is everything if there's a fire or a stroke, a heart attack. I mean, it's all time. That's why we get to put the lights and sirens on our vehicles and get them go.
Okay, so my name is Brian. I'm the Deputy Fire Marshal, also in charge of our emergency management in the township. So I look at hazard mitigation, if there's a tornado, getting funding in, if it's something that outreaches what our department can handle, which is slim to none. But especially with tornado season, the one thing I did want to cover with that is the tornado sirens that are tested every month, the first Saturday of the month, are only meant to be heard outdoors. So, you know, when the tornadoes passed years ago, people go, we didn't hear the tornado siren. Well, you were indoors, so you're not going to hear it. So everybody has a smartphone, everybody has a TV. You're going to get those alerts, put on the emergency alerts so you can keep yourself safe. So part of the whole Community Connect motto is be your own hero, right? Don't rely on us. We'll come if you need us, but be your own hero. So I'm going to cover some very basic fire safety steps. We're going to know 2 ways out from every room, whether it's a door or window. We're going to get low and go if there's smoke in the house, right? We're going to get down below it, get down below the heat. We're going to get out and we're going to stay out and find a meeting place. You know, a lot of times in the past they said the mailboxes, but the mailboxes are right next to the road. We're coming in, it's snowy, raining, whatever. Find a tree, all right? So if everybody would repeat after me, so that we drill this in our brains, 2 ways out, Get low and go. Get out and stay out. And go to your meeting place. Okay? Those are very basic fundamentals of fire safety. So I'm not going to spend a long time because I can bore you. And half of you already look like you're going to sleep on me. So I'm going to invite the councilman, Mr. John Vermeulen, back up. And he's going to close out the ceremony. And again, if you guys are interested in more education, information, tell the staff and tell them to invite us back. Okay? Thank you for listening, and hopefully you learned something today.
Thank you. Running of our township is not a static operation, and you know, when you have a fire department like ours, these guys are not going to take a static environment. They're going to sit there and learn the best practices. They reached out to the doctors, and these doctors who are here today, Dr. Reyes and Dr. Majid, these guys really care because they've actually come out to our fire department, got involved in the training. They interact with Ms. Simon, who's a captain, to make our training better, to make the outcomes better. And I've had very good reports from Chief Pierce as far as our heart attack care as well, that we've doubled the number of successful outcomes compared to the rest of the state. Fire departments treating people, EMS, to where our residents do twice as good as everybody else on average. That is good because it helps to avoid any type of potential handicapping type operation where somebody's going to end up in a nursing home. It minimizes that risk, and it increases the chances that somebody who receives care from our fire department, these excellent doctors that we have here, that you'll return back to normal and in a minimal time. And you cannot beat that. We cannot do that, whether it's our police department, our fire department. This is stuff that me, Mr. Stathakis, and the rest of our board do. And we do this repeatedly because we want the best for our residents. We're in a great community. I've lived here for 27 years, and I tell you, I'm very proud of our community. Mr. Brad Bates, who's head of community relations, he tries to get messages out to make the life and quality of life for our residents a lot better too, taking pride in our community, getting messages out that help the outcomes and quality of life in our community. I can't say it enough. I'm very proud to be one of your trustees, and the best thing of all is that we're delivering it because we manage things very well for 9.299 mills. The best and lowest tax rate of any community with 247 police and fire protection. Thank you very much. And there's going to be a Q&A if you want to ask people questions. Thank you.